So
Mhm.
standard volume is this volume that you have down here on the horizon, right? This is your standard volume. And the standard way is if a stock has, it's the number of shares traded, it's participation, right? It's the number of shares traded. So there was a lot of shares traded, let's say when we had this big volume day, a lot of shares traded when we had this big volume day. So that's the standard way to look at it. I'm going to keep it simple at that, CJ.
Okay. Well, you go another level and you look at what Mark does with his money flow, and you do look at what Kenny does with the VWAP. How do you use the standard volume for those type of trades?
So following Kenny, I think that it's a standard way is if a stock has a good amount of volume, it's more interesting to trade because it creates more liquidity, right? A lack of volume can be dangerous. Let's say if you're bullish a stock and you have some shares and there's no participation, that's when your shares can just drop like that because there's no liquidity where someone can scoop up and get them, right? So that's where you
Right.
hear the falling knife metaphor with standard volume.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what kind of patterns really kind of perk your ears up, or when you see a pattern in volume, whether it is light volume, heavy volume, whatever you're describing here, what really gets you and says, okay, I got to zoom in on this right now?
All right. So for like let's if we're sticking with Kenny, if we're sticking with Mark, I think that for instance, if Kenny is looking at a chart and when Kenny's taking a request, right? And
Mhm.
Kenny's gonna go live in a couple minutes, and they're like, "Scan man, can you look at this stock?" And there's no volume, you're going to get some smack talk, right? He's going to be like, "Are you kidding
Right.
me? There's 5 shares traded. This is not interesting for me." Or with Mark, if there's lack of volume in contracts or in big money flow, it makes it less interesting. What makes
Okay.
standard volume interesting, CJ, and going into that is I'm going to pull up. I'm going to do a throwback to 8 baller. This is right here a beautiful pattern to trade with standard volume. This is VKTX. This is a classic. I used to call this I had a really funny name for it. It I'll have to think about it back in the day when it was the bull market and you'd see charts like this all the time. But you want to trade if you're a bull, accumulation and distribution. So here we have a big pop in volume, right? Was this an earnings play? Not sure what happened here, but you had this big gap and go, big candle, and you had a big volume candle as well. There was a lot of participation, gap higher. And then you had volume kind of just ticker down, right? And you had this you're accumulating, right? You're accumulating. And then look what happened again. Big volume day, big gap higher. And that's when you got that follow through. So you had follow through and follow through. I like to trade something like this with a big pop higher on volume,
Mhm.
right? You can buy here, buy when it's accumulating, and then you're going to get that pop higher again. And it looks like VKTX, we need to accumulate again and get that big volume spike for it to go higher as well. It's just a classic bull chart, right? Classic.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you flip it? Can you flip it for a bearish chart as well? So when you see the selling
Absolutely.
on that heavy volume, is that going to interest you just as much?
Oh yeah. For instance, I mean, Airbnb is not the best. What's something that's been in just a classic bear market? A stock. I have to think of I don't know,
Well,
Chad. If you can throw me one, or if you
why
think of
don't you
one,
pull
CJ.
look at I'm not going to say Fifth Third. Take a look at Pac West. I mean, we know what's going on there, right?
Oh yeah, perfect. CJ, Illy, a perfect example. You just switch it to the complete opposite. You had those big
Okay.
candles, big volume pushing this lower, and then look what happened. It's the exact flip chart. You had some thin
Okay.
volume here as it was accumulating, and now we popped lower again on volume. So this is showing that we're going to have some more follow through to the downside, whether they come and rescue the banks or not. Sometimes news can trump the charts, absolutely, but this is building up for a longer term bearish position.
All right. So that's standard volume. You've
Yes.
got your volume profile, which is your,
Oh.
your added angle there, your added edge, trading edge. Let's walk through an example of that.
So let's talk
Wow.
about volume profile. Let's talk about it for a little bit. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull up. All right. So CJ, you know how Mark won't trade lack of volume. Kenny will
Yeah.
yell at you if you give him a stock that doesn't have a lot of volume. Me, I love less volume the better, baby. Yes, the volume queen is saying that. I love when there's no volume because the volume profile gives us perfect setups for that. Here's an example of the volume profile. This is different, right? You're looking at volume on the side of your screen as an overlay, right? Interacting with price right there in your face.
Mhm.
And we have all these points that show what price, not what day, right? This shows what day had a lot of volume. The volume profile is showing us what price had a lot of volume. And it can give us some great entries and exits. I'm a savant with strategies and with setups, CJ. And the volume profile gives us these beautiful setups of where's support, where's resistance, and how to chase the falling knife. You want to be with the falling knife. I trade with the falling knife, right? That's how I get paid. So I'm looking for those falling knife scenarios or throwing up knives if you're Aladdin, whatever the case is, and I want to be in with it. So the volume profile gives me those setups and it pays us here in the trade the close for sure.
All right. I was going to ask, obviously, where can people learn more? Hold before I do that, though. Airbnb. We just told people about Airbnb. Let's pull up the volume profile for Airbnb.
I knew, so you know what I'm looking at. Here's a great example, CJ, of a lack of volume, right? That's what I
Mhm.
call thin zones. I want to be part of that thin zone. I don't want to avoid it. I want to be part of it. I want to be in it. And this is a great setup to be into that thin zone and get paid. And the other side of the thin zone is right around 100, our target here.
All right.
So that's
I love
that's
it.
why I liked that's why I liked ABNB. Thank you, MBV, for giving me that stock. Love
Yeah.
it.
And now I'll close it out with how can people find out more, Olivia?
All right, guys. So I have a bonus show for you today. It's Thursday. Stick around 9:30. I'll be going live and I'll show you some more setups, how to trade the volume profile. I'll also take some more stocks by request too for you. And we'll go over some trending stocks and see if we can get into some setups and trades together. There are so many setups to trade. I'll show you how. Stick with me.